Hi, welcome to Skagit Board of Commissioners meeting. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, I would be looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 4.
I motion to approve consent agenda items 1 through 4.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. And we will now move on to audience comments. If you are in the audience and you would like to make a comment, please come up to the podium. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Jenna.
Hello. Can I have maybe a few more minutes? I'm speaking for our collective.
Sure. We'll let that. Yeah.
Appreciate it. All right. Jen Friebel, Executive Director of the Drainage and Irrigation District Consortium. Thanks for having me. I first want to just say thanks for PUD's commitment to advance discussions about the seasonal water transfers. We agree that a series of workshops is an excellent next step, and we look forward to working with the PUD on this important issue. And it really and truly is an important issue to ag. So our understanding from the agendas and some of the conversations, the purpose of the workshop is to build a shared understanding of key topics around these water transfers, develop a clear problem statement, identify goals, which we hope reflect the community goals more broadly, and establish a policy framework that would guide future seasonal water transfers. So it's our understanding that the 3-year pilot program ends in 2026. It's been incredibly successful for the districts. Hopefully the PUD shares that same sentiment. We've invested a lot in making the pilot program work and would like to continue that. So with all of this in mind, we respectfully request that the PUD commissioners consider adjusting what we saw in the packet as the proposed workshop sequence to allow the consortium, the districts, other key stakeholders to engage much earlier in the process. We believe that prioritizing early stakeholder participation will strengthen the overall outcomes for your policy. We also encourage the PUD to consider scheduling the workshops outside of the regularly scheduled PUD meetings and conduct them in such a way that gives key stakeholders like ourselves better opportunity to engage, ask questions, learn, and build shared understanding of how we use valuable water resources in the Skagit. So we'd be happy to follow up with a written comment if that would be helpful to the commissioners. I also have a couple questions and comments as it relates to one of the agenda items related to the DFW, temporary seasonal transfers. We have a couple concerns. Maybe there are more questions. We're unclear why PUD is looking at a 3-year agreement with WDFW. We were under the impression that there wouldn't be any multi-year agreements until the policy framework's in place. So it's just something for you guys to consider. We're also understanding that the request is for basically looks like the same agreement that the districts have, $5,150 for, but the water amount is significantly less. Our districts get 300 acre feet. DFW is asking for 10. And we're just worried a little bit that the precedent this would set sort of takes away the cost foundation of the water transfers and might result in a precedent of the water being valued at an order of magnitude more than it currently is under the current agreements. Alternatively, that it just becomes a set fee regardless of how much water is transferred, which might also send a precedent that would be difficult as you consider your policy framework. So again, thanks for the time. Thanks for the pilot program. I appreciate you guys' hard work and willingness to help us deal with ag water supply shortage.
Thank you. Other comments? Great. If you're online and would like to make a comment, please use the raise your hand function. Seeing none, we will now move on to General Manager's report.
All right.
George.
Thank you, commissioners. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Got a few things to cover. It's been a while since we met. I'll start well, I won't call it good news, but I'll start with news. April 8th, the Department of Ecology declared a statewide drought due to low snowpack levels. I'm sure everybody saw that and is aware of that. There had been a lot of rainfall recently, but not enough of that precipitation was left as snowpack. So for us, that usually means a couple of things. One is seasonal water rights transfers to irrigators, which is already in place for 2026. So that's good. And we're now talking about further developing that program. So that's something that usually comes up with a declared drought, and we're already addressing that. The second thing that came through in the emails is that DOE is making available a total of $3 million in drought response funding to offset impacts. And we've used this funding in the past, specifically for 3 of the bulk water fill stations. And internally, we were discussing if there's additional projects that we could submit for funding, and the kinds of things that we've talked about internally. We've put an automated valve up at Gilligan to capture more of the runoff, and that's really helped. It was put in place to not have to have an operator go up and open and close the valve when we were allowed to take the water. And so that automated valve has allowed us to take a lot more water. And that's an improvement so that we don't have to pump as much. And that's a situation or a project that we could look at, and we probably will research it anyway, if we could do it at Mutt Creek as well, if we could put an automated valve there. So we're going to explore the feasibility of that project and then whether it fits within the guidelines of the drought funding for ecology. So that's something we're going to look at anyway. We do need to do some replacement of hardware and software at our existing bulk water fill stations. That was done quite a while ago. And it's the software and the hardware came from car washes. That's where that originated, and it hasn't been as robust as we had hoped. And originally it was set up not with credit card payments. You have to come in here and get an account and then go out there and use a card. There's other ways to do it now. And so we've got a quote on replacing that, and we'll see if maybe that might fit within Ecology's program, because they did fund the original fill stations. And so maybe they'll help us with the upgrade. And then obviously, we could look at another bulk water fill station if that is something that the board is interested in and something that would make sense. Now, one thing to remember is that the drought funding usually is 50%. So the ecology funding would cover 50%. We'd have to put up the additional 50. And the bulk water fill stations, I think, were in the neighborhood of $100,000 or $120,000 total. We have been contacted by one resident, I think in the Big Lake area, about putting one out there. And that's an area where we have heard, anecdotally and from customers that come in, where wells would dry up is over, East Mount Vernon, down the hill towards Big Lake. And that seems to be one of the bigger needs for customers for the bulk water fill station is their wells going dry, which a drought would make worse, obviously. So that's a bigger decision if we were to move forward with a bulk water fill station. So that's something to think about. We don't have to make a decision here right now. Maybe if there's interest that you have, or if there's comments you want to make right now, that might be helpful. We don't have to make a decision, but curious thoughts on putting another one in. And you don't have to say anything you don't want to.
I think automating the Mud Creek makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's the one we like. Hopefully we can make it work.
And updating the current fill stations to accommodate additional customers or make
it easier.
Make it easier.
Yep.
I feel like
Optimize what we have. before we
optimize-
start.
Yeah.
yes, exactly.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Let's see what else is going on. We're currently running 3 pumps at the SRD. So we got into April and we turned on all 3 pumps. So we're filling the reservoir quickly as it is right now. AWWA Drinking Water Week is coming up in early May. And the actual Drinking Water Week is the week of that conference in Tacoma. So The following week is when we are going to hold the public tours that Kevin usually leads up at Judy Reservoir and the water treatment plant. So pretty soon there'll be a sign up online for customers to sign up on that. It usually fills up really fast. And so we'll be doing that soon. We get a lot of good feedback from customers that take that tour. So that, just to remind you, so that Pacific Northwest Section Conference is in Tacoma in early May. Prior to that, the week prior is the Waputa Annual Conference over in Kitsap. I don't know if anyone was planning on attending. I'm going to be there. Okay, I'm not seeing anything. There was an email, however, from Lena yesterday about the commissioner's education session on Wednesday afternoon. And I think they're going to talk specifically about governance, just board relationships, board staff, stuff like that. And it seemed like it would be interesting. So if you have time, you can zoom into that as well. I think it's at 1 o'clock. So if you're interested, go back and read Lena's email, then you can check up on that. An update on the funding application that we sent to Congressman Larson's office about the Panorama tank. We asked for $2.5 million for that, but we were not one of the projects that he selected to put forward for an earmark. So we'll keep having discussions about future projects, but that one was not successful. What else is going on? So the Tulip Festival is happening, right? Were you aware of that, Commissioner Miller? Yeah, okay. This weekend is the street fair, and we are a sponsor at the beer garden. And so the Thirst Buster is going to be there. You may have saw a social media post highlighting Shannon and Cecily about bringing your own water bottle to this festival and the street fair. So the Thirst Buster will be there. And Shannon is actually going to be performing at the street fair on Sunday. So keep your eyes out for that. And then a couple of other small things. The new reverse osmosis plant at Guimas Island is up and running and operational. Just putting some final touches on some IT stuff. So that's great. And interviews are being held this week for the 2 open positions that we have, the project manager and the water treatment plant operator. So those are being conducted today, tomorrow, and Thursday. So lots going on. And there's lots more to talk about tonight, so I'll stop there unless there's any questions.
Just any update on the generator funding from EPA?
Nothing
Nothing
yet.
yet? Okay.
Nope.
All right, let's move on to the IT department update. Alistair.
Good evening, commissioners. Thanks for having me. My portion of this is going to be short because we're actually going to do some show and tell. But I just wanted to give you kind of an update on some of the projects that we have been working on. Nick has been steadily going throughout the district and converting everybody into Windows Hello. Windows Hello is kind of our passwordless identity access where we're using biometrics for people to be able to sign in. It's very convenient. It removes passwords out of the system, so nobody has to worry about remembering a password to log in. And we're seeing some pretty decent success with it, especially some of the folks who really did not like passwords. Now they're able to just sit down, open up the laptop, camera recognizes them, or they're able to throw in a PIN, and access has been real easy. I haven't heard anybody complain about it yet. A zero trust network access, what we have been doing is limiting access to our VPN. We had a minor issue where we had to shut it down temporarily. And it kind of advanced some looking that we had been doing already. We chose Zscaler, and we're in the process of getting that implemented right now. We're hoping to get it done this summer. So we'll be able to turn off the VPN altogether, and we'll allow remote access to applications and services via Zscaler. And so hopefully we'll get that done in the next few months. And Luis is going to come up and do a show and tell with Rubric. We did get that implemented last month, or almost a month ago. And we're really, really excited about it. And that's what we're going to show today. So that's it for me. And I'll turn it over to Luis.
All right. Good afternoon, commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to have me here tonight, and share with you our newly implemented system, backup and security. This rubric, like Alistair mentioned, and to give you guys a little bit of context, Skagit PUD started what we recognize in the IT department to back up and do replication of our most secure system or most important systems, I'm sorry, back in 2010 or before 2010 by using what was mostly available, which it was local tapes. I don't know if you guys remember, it was the AS400, I believe, was one of the systems that I believe Ben was working on, manually inserting the discs, and backing it up every night, every week. That was a very tedious process. Then around 2010, the district purchased Veeam software, which is a very popular software that allows you to back up and secure all of your virtual computers, servers, and so forth. So when we purchased that in 2010, we went through different sets of upgrades and different sets of migrations on Veeam until 2010, until about 2020, when Alistair got here. We started, we recognized that there was a need to implement a solution that would give us the ability to push stuff to the cloud, not just have stuff on premise. We were backing up from that period from 2010 to 2020. We were just backing up stuff to our disaster recovery location located at Knighton Highland over by the high school. So we were doing our replication daily, weekly, monthly, only to those two sites, just in case that we needed to recover anything if this site were to be hit by a natural disaster or something like that. Then in 2020, we introduced Island, which is basically a cloud solution that allowed us to recover from an out of region site. Like in this case, it was down in Dallas, Texas. So we had Veeam and Island working together, right? We will do our local backup and local security, and then we will send up some stuff to the cloud on a weekly basis, on a bi-weekly basis. So later in 2024, we decided, or we noticed that we needed to come up, or we tried to see if there was a solution that would work kind of like together, right? Combine both of those solutions. And that's where we ran into Rubric. We started looking into that. We looked at other options, but then Rubric ultimately was the one that we felt it was the best option for the district. So last month, like Alistair mentioned, Ben and myself, we started implementing this, and we were able to successfully, now after March 20th, to successfully move all of our protection to Rubric from Veeam. So now we only have this one dashboard that basically shows you all of your inventory for the district. And now we have the ability to also push stuff to the cloud, and it's in only in the one dashboard, versus before we had to go to multiple places, multiple systems, multiple platforms, to be able to go and recover files, to be able to recover VMs, servers, and so forth. So now with Rubric, what's giving us is just that, just the centralized location, just being able to manage everything from one location, whether it's on the cloud or on premise or over at Knighton Highland. We have that ability, and also is better, is secure, is more, it has more details into what it can see as far as files, as far as like cybersecurity stuff. So we are very excited about it. Like I said, we're still kind of early in the intro of it, but we're really excited about it. And this summer I'm attending a conference down in Las Vegas to learn more about what Rubric is doing for other government agencies, local agencies, and see how more we can benefit from that, But yeah, we wanted to just kind of show you guys this, and see, show you guys that it's all up and running. And right now in the cloud, we're using about 10 terabytes, and that includes all of our most important servers, whether it's SCADA, Laserfish, GIS, CityWorks, Kayenta, Northstar, right? And all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. I mean, if you're kind of geeky and all that for the IT, it's it's been a really nice solution, long time coming. Veeam was good, and it served us really well for multiple years. But I think it was time now, when it was the logical step to just go ahead and move on to something more like in the gears of Ruby. So yeah, just wanted to just kind of showcase that for you guys a little bit, don't want to take too much of your time either, but wanted to just see if you have any questions.
Just a quick question as far
Mhm.
as being able to like receive notifications if for whatever reason a backup failed or there
Correct.
was some sort of corruption, like you were able to, does it send you guys ping your notifications so it's all centralized and then you can reset
Yes.
okay.
Yes, we have, right now, the only ones that have access to that is myself, Ben, and Alistair, but we do have that ability. In fact, in my email, I do get an event. I'll show you here real quick. Rubric, a daily event right here. Successful events. So it does give you the
Oh, okay.
successful events, and then it gives you some of the warnings as well.
Gotcha.
So it does give you all that.
So did this also give you like fish, like, is this also, I know like some places use Barracuda or whatever for like phishing attacks and for firewall maintenance and for like email not archiving, filtering. Is this also serve that purpose or?
It does have the ability to
Okay.
set that up as well. And that's what we're trying to, right now, what we're using is mostly just the Microsoft
Okay.
stuff. And then we're also using email filtering, not just emailing, but like a bunch of filtering with our CrowdStrike. So I feel like in that area, we're pretty good, but Rubrik also has that ability to start looking at email, to start looking at the OneDrive, like I was saying,
Gotcha.
so start just looking at that protection and the cybersecurity portion. Their protection revolves around the cybersecurity aspect of it, so it's very good. It's very secure oriented, so just very locked in. So we're very happy with it. Yeah. Again, just everything, just the way that, again, from the IT perspective, IT department perspective, is just being able to improve our posture, our cybersecurity posture, and in this case, Rubrik is giving us that as well. So yeah.
Nothing
For
for
me,
me.
thank
That's
you.
good. No, you're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Good. Okay, excellent. All right, next order is the water lease program discussion. Quarterback Nat.
That's going to be me. I'm going to share my screen. Good. All right. Okay. And for a little discussion here, I'm going to kind of give some background, some introduction, and then I'm going to go through the materials that were in the packet, the flow chart, as well as the detail in the memo. So, and then stop along the way whenever necessary for questions. It's meant to be a discussion about the process. And the reason being, so after the last meeting, I, took some time to think about what we're trying to accomplish with the seasonal transfer program. And just with the conversations that we did have in the last couple of meetings, I thought it would be best to take a step back, not right now get into the decisions and the details of the program, but to look at the process. I think it's really important for us to have a thorough, transparent, and defensible process, because this is a big deal. I think getting to a policy and a program after doing the pilots that we have, it's important, obviously, with all the comments that have been made, and just we understand how important it is. So I taking a step back and thinking about what we had done so far, I thought it'd be best to take even a further step back and just say, how are we going to come to a decision? And so that was kind of the reason for putting these materials in the packet. And so, yes, rather than, calling it the temporary seasonal water rights transfer program, I shortened it to a water lease program. That was just to make it a little bit simpler. That's not set in stone. We can call it something else if we prefer. But in the meeting packet, there's a different schedule than I had presented at the last meeting. The last meeting, I think I gave a really brief schedule that ended somewhere in June, I think, or maybe July. And just thinking about all the steps that would be important to us to come to a good decision at the end, I started adding things into that. So there's more of a detailed process in that memo. I tried to put it into a flow chart so it's easier to visualize without having to get into all the text. And then also included in the packet is a proposed schedule for meetings. And so those are hard copies that were left with you guys. So if you want to refer to them as we're going through this, we can do that. Just very quickly, so the reason I wanted to focus on the process first is outlined on the first page of that memo that's included in the packet, and this is the text that's in there. Our goal is to create a policy regarding the water rights, and like it says, to ensure that policy is credible, efficient, and ultimately adoptable. I think it's important for the board to agree on the decision-making process, and then we can get into the details so that we avoid any mistrust, confusion, and especially any rework. That would just be frustrating, I think, as well. The bullets listed here are what will allow us to accomplish if we agree on a process for everybody. We could build trust, clarify roles, prevent rework and delays, keep the effort structured, defensible, align expectations early. So this is a lot of how we decide and not necessarily what we decide. So that's kind of the objective of talking about the process first before we get to even talking about things that will be in the policy or in the program. So my plan is to go into the detail that's in the meeting packet memo, just through slides and explanation of each of the steps. But before I do that, I'll just pause here if there's any comments or questions just before we get into this. And we can stop at any time to ask questions or comments as well.
None yet.
Just keep going. All right. Let's move on. So this is the flow chart that is in the meeting packet memo. And this is my vision on how I saw this unfolding. There's arrows kind of following along. First would be the policy development. This is the bulk of the work, I think. Well, maybe I'll take that back. This is an important piece of the work to do before we create the program itself. Trying to distinguish between the policy and the program. Policy would be identifying goals and concerns, having some public input, regulatory review, and then ultimately coming to a policy adoption. So there's multiple steps located within this box, which I'm going to get into in future slides. Then we get to, being able to refer to that policy, which is an overarching description of what we want to accomplish in order to build a detailed program. The program is where a lot of the things that we've talked about already would come into play. How much, when, those kinds of questions would come up in that program creation. And then, it was my thought that we are expanding this and we're taking more time to think about this, and that it would develop another pilot program, one that we can adjust based on conditions. That's kind of what we've done. Well, we just are in the third year of our pilot program that we created now. If we go through and develop a policy, look at a different kind of program, some of the parameters of what we're doing might change. And I feel like it would be prudent for us to get it to another pilot that we can then test, learn, adjust as necessary. And then that would eventually lead into lease agreements and then monitoring evaluation. Monitoring and evaluation, that's making more improvements as we see this program evolve. I think we all might think that we see the program a certain way, and it might involve certain people and industries and companies. I think we're going to be faced with unexpected things that come out during this process and even in subsequent years. So continuing to monitor it and evaluate it, I think, is an important step at the end, because that might go back and we might recreate part of the program depending on how it goes. So that's just kind of a vision of the process of how I think we might go through this. And again, everything in this flow chart, the stuff I'm going to discuss, it's meant to be flexible. It's meant to grow if necessary, adjust as needed. And if we want to add things, add steps, that's what this discussion is for. So moving forward, just a brief discussion about policy development ahead of the program creation. So this is kind of the analogy that, there's a couple of analogies I want to run through. This is one of them. Running a marathon is a big goal. And to do something like that, you've got to figure out how you're going to get it done. And the best way to do it is to break it down. You're going to have some strategies on how you're going to run that marathon if you attempt to do it in 6-month timeline. And then within each of those strategies, you're going to have tactics. That's where all the detail is. How often do you run, strength train, meal, track your progress, all those kinds of things. I look at this as an analogy to what we're trying to accomplish. We want to establish a water lease program.
Can I just,
Yes.
the word lease, I just kind of want to say that I'm not really open to that word. There's some legal aspects to the word lease that I think are maybe conveyed differently in what our goals are. So I wouldn't want to use the word lease until we actually understand what our program goal is,
Sure.
Whether it is a lease or is it a seasonal transfer? Because those are, and does it involve drought condition? I mean, there's just so much that I think lease implies that may not pertain to what we're discussing.
The rights rather than the water.
Turn that on.
It just is throwing out
A water right lease
alternative
program.
way to put it. We're not leasing the water, we're leasing the rights.
Right. Yeah. This is something we've talked about.
Yeah,
It's always meant, we've always meant it to be seasonal. We've always meant it to be temporary. And we've always wanted to say it's the rights that we're transferring.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. We could choose a different word. I'm not locked into this word. It's a word that I came up with because it implies in itself that it's not permanent. It's a
Yes.
short-term thing. Lease is not a permanent thing. So I thought that conveyed that message. That's why I personally like the word. I'm not, I could have my mind changed. It's whatever we want to call it.
I just think whatever we end up calling, I'm of, temporary transfer raw water policy or raw water transfer policy. I don't know. I just, the word lease, it just kind of caught me off guard because we've never used that terminology.
We haven't, no.
Regarding this discussion. So just saying that's a little hang up for me.
Yep.
So.
I'm going to keep using it though, just
That's
because
okay.
I have it.
That's okay.
We can change it later.
Change it in my head.
Sure,
It's something
that's
else.
fine. So the analogy, I think you can just see how it compares, if we're establishing a water lease program, comparing it to a marathon, we should look at a policy framework, consider some broader issues, gather stakeholder input, and then drive into tactics after that. It's what we've done with our strategic plan. It's kind of the same, start at the top, work your way down. And even when you're at the lower levels, if you do it properly, you can refer back to things that you've done earlier. Focus. Don't lose focus in the tactics. Refer back to your strategy. What were you trying to accomplish? And then ultimately, what was the goal that you're trying to get at? So that's one analogy I used. I think a different one and maybe a better one is on how and why creating a policy above a program is important. It's kind of how we structure ourselves here you're not meant to read this. But internally, our organization, we have policies and we have underneath them, we have APMPs and SPMPs. So the safety program is one of those things. And this is a good analogy for us. We've got, policy 1026 is our safety, commitment to safety policy. It doesn't talk about the details of all of our safety requirements. It's meant to provide a framework on how resources should be deployed to focus on high priority issues, right? There's a kind of a policy goal statement, what we want to accomplish with our safety program. It outlines at a high level the kinds of things we want to address: regulations and best practices, compliance and reporting, stop work authority. It just discusses, here's the items that we need to include in accomplishing our purpose goal. But so the policy is overarching, it's more general, it's broader, but then within that, it refers to, in this case, SPMPs. Those contain all the detail of how are we going to deal with compliance and reporting. We have a very specific SPMP that lays that out. Some of the SPMPs you've seen have been very thick. They include diagrams and charts and forms and checklists and all these different things. This is how I see our program being developed. We look at a policy for the water lease program that's more general, talks about the hows and the whys. And then afterwards, we come up with a program, which is an analogy to the SPMPs of here are the details on how to accomplish each of those things. So that's kind of how we operate daily, separating those two documents. And so I thought this was a good way to share with the board how I would like to approach this. So one's the what and the why, that's the policy, and then the how and the when would be the program. So that's why those are separated on the flow chart.
Just want to provide some clarification for those in the audience that may not understand, like at what point do the commission not have oversight or have to approve an SPMP so we still have the approval authority
Yes.
of what the SPMP.
It comes to you for
Yes.
review and comment. Yes.
I just want to
Yep.
make sure that
Yep.
that process is clear.
Yep. All right. So now getting into the detail in that memo, the numbering is slightly different, but it just reinforces kind of what I've been talking about. So phase 1 is policy development. Second phase of creating this water lease program would be actually creating that program with all the details and then getting into a pilot at the end of it, if that's what we all agree to do. This is kind of how I've been thinking about this. So that first box in the flow chart. So what's included in here is a proposed schedule of things that we would look to accomplish moving forward. Today, obviously, we're just talking about the process. But I would hope that at the next meeting on April 28th, we can start talking about policy items, policy discussion, a structured discussion on the program's purpose, the risks, the benefits, and the overall direction. This would be the higher level direction that the board gives to us as we try and form a policy. It's not meant to get into the details. And my proposal is to have a series of questions that I would send to the board early, prior to the meeting. And we're not limited to those, but those would be the common ones that we could talk about. And that we would bring those forward at the next meeting on the 28th. And they're broader questions, more general, the how and the why, or the what and the why, right? Like the really high level questions. And then we could start those discussions at the next meeting. May 12th is a meeting that isn't on the calendar. Commissioner Miller is going to be away that day. So then the discussion would pick back up on May 26th. So there's some gaps in the schedule just because of absences and other things going on, which I think sometimes helps because it gives us time to think about things in between as well. The objective would be to continue that policy discussion and hopefully come to a point where we can talk about a policy goal at that second meeting in May, if we get to that point.
I mean, I guess it goes back to the analogy on, running a marathon. Something that you have to do before you even start considering running a marathon is why are you going to run that marathon, and
Hmm?
do the research as to what is a successful strategy to accomplish that. So I feel like the missing piece for me here is that initial, like, why have we done the transfers to the current constituency that we're working with? Why are they in the situation that they're in? The MOU being a great example of us needing to understand that better, as well as the other kind of series of events of water policy that's occurred within Skagit County. I think like we need to really understand that for us to really grasp and agree on what the goal and the why and the issue that we're actually trying to correct or achieve for our community is here. So, and I also feel like a stakeholder work session should be upfront to get to know more about the why from their perspective and not just what we've observed from behind our desks here. So that's something that I'm passionate about working with stakeholders, is you do a lot of the work up front, not as you've already decided the why, because we may
I
each
mean,
have our
I
own.
wouldn't mind having another work session in between with the stakeholders that we've been working with, because, I mean, let's be honest, we've had a 3-year pilot program. And now we're coming back to them and telling them we're doing another 3-year pilot program. I mean, we're not, I'm not back.
We're not agreeing on it
Quarter
yet.
on 3 years,
No.
but I mean, we're gonna start another pilot program, and the idea was after this one, this was gonna be more of a permanent policy. So I think sitting down in a work session, I mean, if you can go sometime between May 12th and 26th, just to get their input before we bring anything forward in June, is not gonna hurt anybody.
So I just want to back up for a sec. The goal of this isn't to create the policy. This is just to start the discussion amongst the board of the items that are important to you that you've heard about to include into the policy. And then to start at the May 26th meeting to start talking about stakeholder groups. The next step, I think, might address what you're talking about, which is like there's a lot of legal and regulatory review that I think is important to this, right? Like we're planning to open up the stakeholder input net fairly wide, right? Because I think there could be a lot of people that would have input. They can be invited. They may not choose to participate. I'm not sure. The MOA is a good example. We should invite all the MOA partners, right? They're all included in the water rights discussion. There's a list of other people that we could have. Internally, we debated whether that review comes after the stakeholder meeting or before the stakeholder meeting. We talked about having it earlier just because it'd be good to have the answers to a lot of those questions you just talked about before we get to the stakeholder questions, because they might ask the same kinds of things. So getting the answers to what have we done, how does ecology look at this, any kind of, if there's some MOA criteria that we need to think about. We talked about having that information in our hands before having the stakeholder meeting so that we could respond to a lot of those questions if they came up.
But some of the issues aren't necessarily questions in regards to the implications. Like it's more so understanding what implications occurred after the MOA was established and what groups were not included there, and are those our target groups to be helping because they were forgotten as part of the MOA. I mean, it's going to help us guide us as to who are the stakeholder groups that are important to our community for us to focus on, and what are their
Right.
issue statements that we are or are not going to agree to fix. And then I honestly think another part of this program or procedure should be coming up with our own MOU on how this process is going to move forward, who we've established as stakeholders, and say that we are dedicated to the goals that we've said that we are going to set for this process. Because I think this last 3 years, I mean, if I were a irrigator who was part of a pilot program, who had the hope on the last 7 memos that we've sent to them about doing these transfers, and now we're saying, oh, we're starting all over. And that we didn't ever sign anything saying that those were our goals, that we were going to help you long term. We need to establish like what our commitment is through a signed document, even before moving forward with a set policy. Like, here is our intention, signed on intention. Like, here is our why, here is our strategy of how we're going to get to why, and we all agree that this is the right way to do it.
So that's the intent of these first couple of meetings, is to talk about all of that. I'm not sure establishing goals is the helpful part of these first two meetings. Figuring out some of the higher level stuff, coming to a series of goals. It could be more than one. And then, like you said, identifying the stakeholder groups. Not sure what signing an agreement at this point early in the process would accomplish, though.
And I'm saying that this would happen after we even have the discussion of understanding what the problem is. Like, we need the problem statement first.
Yes.
Then
right.
we need to move, because I don't understand how you've worded it, to focus on the program purposes, key risk potential. I'm not seeing any education before that as to how we've gotten to where we are and why we've done the transfers we have in the past. And here are the scenarios that occurred. And
we can include that.
That's what I'm asking.
Sure.
That's what
yes.
I'm asking for.
Yeah, we
it's
can
like an
include that
educational section within that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's all information there's a lot of that information that we have that we can summarize and put forward, because we started with this in 2015, right? Like, so there's things that go back to 2015 that we can provide as a summary on, here's what we did. You can try and come up with the why or remember the why, but yeah, all of that could be provided ahead of that meeting for sure. Yes.
I think the history behind the transfers is really important. And I think the intent, also the implications of the MOU, like that's also very, very important. And we should be well versed in all of that leading up to these further policy setting discussions.
Yeah, I think that's a white paper. I don't know that I need another meeting for that, but if
I could send all that to you guys ahead of the meeting. Yeah.
To have it as a discussion item if there are questions that present themselves.
Yeah, that can definitely.
I just don't want to go into that first meeting being like, I've only been a part of the last few, and every time we've had this discussion, it was to work towards a long-term solution.
So it's getting a better description of the history, right?
Okay, why are we having this conversation again?
Yeah, no, that can definitely be included in the things that I send you before the next meeting for sure. We've already started preparing a bunch of that stuff, so it's just kind of putting it together for you. Okay. And then I guess it's kind of a debate on, do we have the stakeholder meeting right as the very next step, or is that legal? I wanted to do the legal and regulatory review before having the stakeholder meeting. You could do it either way. Like, it doesn't mean it has to happen in that order.
Can you elaborate more on what, like, the legal review? Because you just said that we're not setting any policy. We're just saying how we're going to get there and saying what the goals are. What would there be to review?
So it wouldn't be just legal. So there'd be legal, technical, operational, and regulatory review. So some of the things that might impact our decisions or even some of the questions. So what are the technical things that we need to review and understand before we start making decisions about things? So the SRD, Judy Reservoir levels, drought conditions, so operational things like that, regulatory issues, water rights transfers, how ecology reviews them, how they look at them. I'm just coming up with things off the top of my head. It's nothing I've heard, but just if anybody has questions about the way ecology looks at transfers in general, and maybe these transfers specifically, how have they evaluated them? How have they reviewed them? What's their process? So it's to understand a lot of that information that might feed into some of the decisions that we make. And so the objective would be to gather that information ahead of the June 9th meeting and then bring it forward to you at the June 9th meeting and discuss it and understand and get to a point where we understand the sideboards that we have for all these different factors. We have operational sideboards, we have technical sideboards, we have regulatory sideboards. What are they? And laying those out and understanding them, and having a meeting dedicated to understanding that prior to having the stakeholder work session, because some of those questions might come up, and understanding those and being able to respond to stakeholder questions, I think is important to get all that information ahead of time. So that's why I structured that first ahead of the stakeholder meeting. Doing it the other way, you might get a stakeholder meeting where we're just taking notes and saying, well, what about this? What about that? And then coming back and saying, okay, now we got to answer all these questions. I was trying to get ahead of it and kind of getting to your point, Commissioner Hamburg, understanding not just the history, but how other agencies are making their decisions and will make them about this program. How are we going to make decisions internally about this program? So kind of laying out all the different factors that are involved. I thought that would be helpful to have ahead of the stakeholder meeting.
Oh yeah, I'm probably surprised at that. I agree. I mean, I like to know what the law, I like to know what the case law is with the RCW. I like to know what the sideboards are, what the lanes are, who's saying what and why. So, I mean, yeah, it sets a solid foundation for decisions that have been made and decisions that we can make. Because otherwise you could get going down paths that are unlawful, meaning just the law doesn't.
Or making assumptions about something. There's technical, operational, regulatory. If there's any legal questions, you know, if we're at risk for anything, I'd like to explore that before getting to the stakeholders. So that's why I set that ahead. So think about that. I'll leave that there. And then you get to a stakeholder meeting. So yeah, this doesn't have to happen at one of our meetings. I think if we schedule this the way I have it laid out, it would be sometime in June. I think it's just going to be a challenge to schedule something like this. So we'll just have to take a date that we can get as many people there as possible. At the meeting earlier, 2 meetings earlier, we're coordinating questions, groups, finalizing the invitation list, doing all that ahead of time so that when the meeting time comes, we would invite stakeholders that we agreed to invite. If they can't make it, allow them to submit written comments, but then have a meeting here in public, and then we can kind of go through everything. That would happen sometime in June, and then the next meeting following that is when we would, I think, just review everything that happened.
I guess I just have a really quick, I mean, as far as step 1 and step 2 goes, what is the goal to have culled out to be able to be discussed further at that? Like what are we going to have a consensus of goals, or just have a list of goals that we think like
a list? I think present based on some of the early discussions, what you think are important.
Okay.
We could have here's a list of 4 potential goals that we could adopt, something like that. And we could decide if we wanted to adopt a goal or a couple of goals at that point. I don't think we have to if we don't want to, but it's kind of coalescing a lot of that input from you and saying, okay, this is what we heard. And here's a really brief 1 or 2 sentence summary on what a goal could look like.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just clarifying that there's not any action items that are
there doesn't have to be
taken. It's just more of here's a fact sheet document or whatever that will be led part of leading or the framework for the discussion with the stakeholder group.
We might agree to, yes, this sounds like a good goal, and we could just use that, move forward. We could come up with 2, and then as we move forward, we just refer to them and maybe refine them as we move forward. Yeah. There's no rules to what we're trying to do. I think we can adjust the process as necessary.
No, I agree. I think that's something that can happen is either like, there can be a concern of engaging stakeholders before you have more, like enough information. And then
You might need to go back.
there's a concern of you made too many assumptions and you kind of got down a certain track and then have to.
And so I didn't build that into this schedule. This was assuming next step followed the one before. But yeah, if we need to retrace our steps and go back, all it does is push the dates out, which is okay. That's fine. So yes,
Adaptive management.
these are important decisions, and it's important to get the decisions correctly rather than quickly, is the way I'm looking at it. So yes, dates, content, decisions, we can adjust. It would be nice to come to a decision on a goal at that meeting, but it's not necessary to get to the next steps. The legal review, the stakeholder input. So this might take a bunch of time here. I think the first meeting in June is that ACE conference. And so we wouldn't have that meeting, give us time to prepare for the stakeholder meeting, but we try and schedule that according to the schedule sometime in June, and then follow up with, it's the second meeting in June. It's the ACE conference. And then we'd have a meeting to discuss the stakeholder input after that. That's the way I saw this kind of rolling out. And we may need to do it again. We may need to look at other things. So once we get past that step, then that'd be a good time. Okay, now we start putting our thoughts together. Start creating a framework of what the policy might look like based on what you think the goal might be, things that you came up with, and things that you've heard from the stakeholders. That's after all of that is when we would start trying to piece together a policy. And it would start with, staff kind of working something up and proposing it to you and then editing it, right? Working on it back and forth, editing it, getting your comments, feedback. So that might take more than one meeting. It might take more than two meetings. Like, that's just the process in getting it done. And I put dates on them just because if it happens sequentially, that's when it would happen. But that might take us all of August before we can get to a policy framework that we're happy with. The policy framework wouldn't have a bunch of the details, right? It's more the what and the why. And so trying to get that policy. If we can get a policy adopted, before the end of the summer, okay, that's the policy. Then we can move into the details of the program where there might be even lengthier discussions.
I am very much, I would put, depending on your guys' schedule, but I'm very open to scheduling
Additional meetings.
Yeah.
All right.
I feel like like you said, this is a very important topic. We need to do it right, and ensuring that, we come to a consensus. Doesn't need to happen fast, but it definitely doesn't necessarily need to take 2 weeks for us to make decisions on certain things or to have a follow-up meeting regarding a certain topic.
It might depend on how much time we need in between meetings to gather the information and, condense it and present it. So it depends. If it's just another stakeholder meeting, that could happen quickly. But if we have a lot of information or a deliverable at the next meeting, sometimes having a bit more time helps. So it depends what it is, but okay, that's helpful to know. If, summer schedules, I know are busy, so we'll just try and make it work. As I said, the schedule I laid out, we can change that as necessary. There's a lot of it after this that I just put to be determined, because there's no point in getting any further than that with dates.
I think with a lot of the stakeholders too, and the thought that's rattling around my head is I don't want a meeting that could have been a memo, right? And I think if we require a measure of forethought, then that could actually spur on, things happen quicker if we, from the stakeholders, not that we require some kind of a process or anything like that, but if we, prior to a stakeholder meeting, we ask them to state that, what are their objectives? What are their hangups? What are their, so that we're informed.
Well, it's almost like a questionnaire, and this
I
is what
would
I don't
prepare
know.
one.
This is
Yeah.
what I think
Yeah.
needs to happen. This is a step that I think doesn't provide any, I guess, there's no legality behind it. Just here are questions that we have even after our first meeting,
Yes.
and putting that out as a questionnaire to
That's what we would do.
our stakeholders early on, so that we can at least we can get some of that taken care of, and then we have like more in-depth talking points when we come to.
For me, that's the cheat code. Like, give
Yeah.
me a stack of things to read so that I can think about it and ask better questions when we're in the room. I just,
And have time too, like a Friday to a Tuesday for me on certain, that's not enough time to really digest some input, really. Like I need at least a week.
So I back this up to the step one. I propose at that second meeting in May to go through who we want to invite and the list of questions that we want to send them. So that could be sent earlier for sure, because we've already started working on that. And yeah, we can get that done earlier so that we have it in our hands and we can move forward with it when we're ready. But that would be my proposal, is to have 10, 15 questions, whatever it is, and put it in the package, send it out to everybody that we want, just so I want it to be transparent. I want it to everybody to be aware what is being asked and what the feedback is as well.
Yeah,
I think
everybody
that's
can see
important.
everybody else's comments,
Correct.
and it, yeah, definitely makes it helpful for everyone. at the
And
table.
some people may not be able to make an in-person meeting, so having the questions helps. They can submit it in writing and we'll compile it and we'll share it with everybody.
I like that a lot.
So at some point, we will get to the last steps in this first box and hopefully adopt a policy. But there's time, because I think it's probably going to happen where there's additional public review and refinement, like the back and forth that's necessary to get to a policy that everybody's happy with. If we go through all this and, may or may not add meetings, this is going to get us to the policy. And then we can start thinking about the program, the details of the program after that. I've laid out things in that memo about the program creation. We can talk about that if you like. It's just my thoughts on how we'll get to this, but I didn't put any dates. It's not a lot of detail on this. But it's the things that we've been talking about, right? Volumes, methods, pricing, procedures, monitoring, eligibility, all those kinds of things. After the policy is when we should get into this level of detail. And I didn't really put together a step-by-step on this. As we get closer, that's something that we can review and go through as well. If I go through this and lay everything out, it's more than likely to change. So, but it's there. It's kind of the objective of that phase 2, the program creation. And then you get into phase 3, which is the pilot. If we agree to a pilot, I'll put that in there too. That's just what I thought would work. But if it's supported by you, this is how we could handle the third phase: pilot, leases, and then monitoring. And then that can be a loop as we go back. So I didn't focus too much on the boxes 2 to 5. The objective today was to talk about steps for policies and kind of things we want to cover at our next meetings. So there's the schedule. It's in the packet. Things that we know so far. There's meetings in there that we know, that we shouldn't have discussions if somebody's missing. I think this is important enough to make sure everybody's here. And then we'll fill in dates and adjust as necessary. But that's kind of what we would be trying to tackle at each of those if we go through the way we thought we were going to. And then that's just bringing that back up. So as I said, I'll go back. All right. I'm preparing a list of topics and questions that I think would be helpful for our next meeting on the 28th. Things that would help feed into the way we create this policy. It's not meant to get answers, but it's meant for you to start thinking about those so we can start using them when we get to the point of drafting the framework. So that's getting the material early, being able to think about it, and then having time to respond. So try and get that to you as early as I can. questions. We'll work on the summaries as well of the history, try and get that to you as early as we can. And then the goal would be just to talk about those two things at the next meeting. The history, why did we do that? What were the details? What were the concerns? And then some of the questions that we asked you, the broader questions. If there's specific things that you have strong feelings about, then we bring that up, we include that in everything, and we collect all the information.
And I think a good point of this too is just like, as we said, like we may find something out later on and then have to come back. If any stakeholder group does have a concern of the process or manner in which we're moving forward, I do advise them to reach out to George and say, here's something that concerns us, or we would like to be interacting in this portion, or we would like to be able to present on this at the stakeholder meeting. If there's any of that, that I would highly recommend sending that, because maybe I don't want to have a blind spot is all I'm saying.
No, I'm preparing a spreadsheet to keep all of the comments and questions and feedback so that we can present it. So that you, just because people are emailing me directly, that's information that should be shared with you and with everybody. So I'm going to keep that, and that'll just be a log that I keep and can update you as I get them.
Is there any way, I know that in some cities will have like project pages, right? And since this is a highly like stakeholder involved process, in order to add transparency, is there any way that we could have a link on our website or even have just a web page dedicated to this process and like associated documents and easy finding meeting minutes that are associated with these conversations, and just like a really, just like a very
It's like a project page,
one-stop
right? Yeah.
project page for this process? Just to
Something we can talk
ask.
about. Absolutely, it's possible. Yeah. Putting the like things like the documents that are in this, I think would be nice to highlight on our website to say we're working on this. And then it's a matter of, okay, what other documents do we post? I think, yeah, that's something, yeah, we should talk about that. What kind of things would be good to put on that? See what capabilities we have.
Yeah, contacts of who's working on the project, or whatever. If you have any questions, or you feel like you're a stakeholder that hasn't been reached out to, contact this person, or I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. It's going to be going on for multiple months. So,
Well, yeah, multiple is might be shortchanging it a bit. Could go even. Yeah, that's something we can talk about. Probably heard me ramble for long enough. Yeah, so I didn't share this with you, but I've, stakeholder list. This isn't in the package, just something I brought. It's my own. Just something to start with. So I'll present that, and we'll continue to refine it at our next meeting and say, this is who we're thinking about. Who else should we include? Like we'll put that all on there to make sure that everybody has feedback on it. And then the questions will come as well.
Good. Good.
So yeah, just wanted to run through all of that with you and talk about process. I think process is important in a situation like this.
I think my two biggest parts are, one, trying to get a better, understanding of the MOU, our water rights, why have we done transfers, history, detailed history. And then number two is trying to engage stakeholders. I love the idea of doing like surveys,
Get the questions ahead
get the
of time.
questions out as soon, as soon as possible, and then offering opportunities for people to have conversations with us rather than present and us not being able to acknowledge what they're presenting to us. Like that's where I believe that the framework of an actual like work session is very critical. And this is breaking that boundary of Robert's Rules of Order where it's really awkward.
And building time into our schedule for you guys to be able to have those conversations, I think is important. If we're, like methodically next meeting, it doesn't leave a lot of time sometimes in between to have the one-on-one discussions or for even us to sit back and think. Like at the last meeting, it was after that it was like, okay, we need to just keep stepping back here. Like
And I
thinking
appreciate,
about
I
this.
sent George, because this is what my undergraduate research was in, was stakeholder collaboration and water resource management. So this is something that I'm very passionate about. And I've been doing research on like the key elements to successful stakeholder interactions in natural resource management. And there's this little paper that very, very, very helpful paper that this does encompass a lot of what I sent you. And I really appreciate that you took the time to acknowledge that it is a longer process. It is a complicated process, but it is valuable.
It's valuable. It sometimes might seem like we're taking too long or like, can't we get things done quicker? But I feel like time is an important resource to use when we're making a decision like this.
Good.
Okay.
All right.
We will bring this up. We can bring the flow chart up and the schedule up at every meeting just to see where we're at and if we're on track or if we need to change something. That's the objective as well at every meeting.
Good.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, George. New business. Let's talk about granting of a setback easement for disinfection system replacement building at water treatment plant.
Oh,
Thank you. This essentially, we're in the final phase of the design for the disinfection system improvements, and we need to go to permit. In order to submit that permit, we have to make sure the place we're putting the facility meets with the zoning codes. Essentially, this request is to get an easement from ourselves instead of adjusting a lot line or anything like that. The other option is to join the parcels together. It would have the same effect. This is easier and
everything should be in
quicker.
here.
So the remnant piece of property that is to the southwest, you can't build on it anyway. So because of the power lines are right there. And so basically this has the effect of joining those two parcels together so that we can put our buildings in close proximity to one another. And the form is not our typical form. This is a form that the county prefers that we use to meet their zoning codes, their particular language. So we're looking for approval on this easement.
I motion to authorize the general manager to grant the attached setback easement to Skagit PUD.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Now approval of Public Works Board pre-construction funding agreement for Panorama storage tank. All right.
Good evening. This is in your packet is the actual loan documents from the Public Works Board. You'll recall both from the CIP discussions for the budget. This is our largest project that's upcoming. It's the Panorama storage tank, 1.6 million gallons. This will finalize the design, pay for public outreach, and also do the permitting and the bid documents. It's a up to $750,000 loan. It's a 5-year loan because it's just for the engineering at 1.06% interest. And so the annual payments will be about $155,000. We continue to look for funding. And so my hope is that we will use this money and then successfully complete the final design and get it under contract. And then by that time, the opening will come around for actual construction loans again. So we'll be right on the window, hopefully at the end of fall with the bid documents and be ready to go out to bid and also apply for a larger loan for that construction. Any questions for the loan documents? And you'll be authorizing George to sign the document.
I'd authorize the general manager to enter into pre-construction funding agreement with the Public Works Board for the Panorama storage tank in the amount of $750,000.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Approval of interlocal for temporary seasonal water charge rights transfer to WDFW.
see how hard that is to say?
That's a long.
I just got there.
It's a lot.
Thank you. So This initially started out with a request from the Department of Ecology contacting us, looking for or inquiring about our ability to transfer a water right, a very small amount of water to Fish and Wildlife for this project. Looking at the map that's enclosed in here, you can see why they are looking for a source of, well, you can understand why they're kind of looking for a source of water, even though it's all around them. There are no pipes or any way to, efficiently transport water back and forth from this property. So Ecology was initially talking about a special exemption to themselves to give to Fish and Wildlife, but they thought it would be better to go through a formal process like everybody else goes to. They requested our assistance in this. We formulated the interlocal agreement with input from Ecology. Late today, I got a call from Fish and Wildlife, who did request one change really specifically to the interlocal, and that was to approve the transfer specifically for 2026 with possible extensions for 27 and 28. So they're asking that we reduce the timeline of this transfer. Once the interlocal is approved, we will work with Ecology on putting the actual transfer together and then potentially authorize it after that transfer is approved by Ecology.
If I could just add some comments as well, just maybe even addressing some of Jenna's comments that she had earlier. So we've talked about this when we first talked about this at one of our meetings. I think it was with the assumption that any other water transferred to somebody like WDFW would reduce the amount that's left in this future program that we're talking about. And so we didn't want to confuse this. We didn't want to bring this up and have this affect the larger discussion about the lease program. In conversations with Larry Wasserman at the Swinomish Tribe, he agreed we have a letter of understanding with the Swinomish Tribe as far as the amount of water to transfer that we are transferring in the summer. He agreed to leave this out of that whole conversation and letter of understanding. So this transfer doesn't impact anything that we just finished spending, 25 minutes talking about. However, I don't want to confuse the two either. So we thought it would be fine to bring this up because it is separate. It doesn't impact any decisions we make about a water lease program policy or a program. This is a temporary construction that they're doing. It's not meant to last longer than 3 for sure years. Any pricing or anything like that, I think we should just acknowledge that that's not meant to set a precedent or put a market value on anything. This is a very specific thing that Ecology has requested. The tribe is supporting. It's temporary in nature and it doesn't affect this other program. So I thought we could just put it here rather than waiting for this other program to be developed. And this would still sit outside of it, even if we did that. So I didn't see a need to keep it separate.
I still don't. I mean, we're still in the midst of, they're not separate because we're still transferring water, raw water. We don't have a raw water policy. And that was the initial discussion and why we're going down this policy setting process in the first place with the other stakeholders. So I feel like that is muddying the waters. And I feel like we are adding an element of precedent setting, regardless of if we have an MOU with Larry Wasserman or the tribes in regards to an additional amount of water. We're still operating. We are adding to and saying that we're going to do a multi-year with another entity who could come and ask for more water for another project in the Delta. So I just feel like I motion to table this transfer discussion until after we set raw water policy.
Discussion.
So they need the water like right now.
In June.
June, yeah.
They're planning construction in June.
Well, you had me at Ecology asked for it. I am of a mind that that they are a significant stakeholder in anything that we're trying to do moving forward. And in as much as it's not a matter of playing well, it's just a matter of it's not taking from, again, as I understand it, it's not taking from one giving to another. This is a separate working with the state to accomplish state goals that are consistent with.
But we haven't even decided if the state is going to be one of those that we're going to be working with. In our
They're by RCW, one of the stakeholders. Like
Okay.
we
I
don't,
mean, anything we do, Department of Ecology is gonna,
they get to
have their
decide
hands
what we
in,
do
so-
anyway. Yeah, that's
that's right, I think
that's
it's
where it
a
gets back
risk
to the
to.
law, where it's like, well, the concern for me is that that a group of stakeholders came to us and we went down a path. We created it, we've been doing it for 3. Now we have another set of stakeholders it's the state that's saying, oh, well, you're creative and you want to solve solutions for everybody. And let's do this. To frustrate that, I think is unnecessarily perilous.
I agree.
So, so there is a motion.
There's a motion.
That's a motion to approve the seasonal water
Well, we
rates.
have-
No, no,
There's
there's a
a-
motion to table
Yeah,
until
there's a
A
policy
motion to
has been
table, yes,
set.
okay, sorry,
So we do not have a
Vote on it.
second.
no second.
Okay, so that motion fails. So is there another motion?
I would motion to approve the temporary seasonal water rates transfer to Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
We have 2 aye and 1 nay. Motion carries. All right, that is it for new business. We, of course, are loving lots of water in the Judy Reservoir. Thank you for that. Other commissioner comments? Joe?
Done for me?
Ben?
No?
Thank you. A great meeting. We will adjourn at 5:52.